Under the pale glow of a cold morning, Marcus Thompson eased his old Toyota Camry into the courthouse parking lot. The building rose before him like a fortress of marble and memory, every column gleaming in the new sun. He'd walked through those doors thousands of times in his long career, but today was different. Today, he wasn't coming as a visitor or a staff attorney. He was coming to be sworn in as a justice of the state Supreme Court. 62 years old, steady in his step, carrying the same worn leather briefcase his father had once owned. He barely had time to close the car door before a voice cut through the air. "Old black man, stop right there. Hands where I can see them." Officer Dara Patterson's voice was sharp, rehearsed, the kind of authority that feeds off fear. The words cracked across the parking lot like a whip. Marcus froze instinctively, an old reflex born from a lifetime of knowing when not to move too fast. The red and blue lights flashed behind Derek's patrol car, painting his dark skin in streaks of accusation. Marcus raised his hands slowly, palms open to the morning light. The briefcase slipped from his grasp, hitting the wet asphalt with a dull thud. "Turn around slowly," the officer barked. Marcus complied, his every motion deliberate, careful. In the patrol car, Derek's partner, a young cop named Kyle, was already filming the scene with his phone. The metallic hum of the camera lens joined the sound of distant traffic. Derek stepped closer, his boots splashing through a shallow puddle, his badge catching the sun like a weapon. "You don't belong here," he sneered, the stench of stale coffee and cigarettes rolling off him. "This is a courthouse, not a welfare office." Marcus's voice remained calm, measured, even as his heart pounded. "I work here," he said. "I have for 20 years. Derek laughed, a short, ugly bark that seemed to echo in the still air. "What are you, a janitor? Security guard who couldn't retire?" For a moment, Marcus said nothing. He had learned long ago that silence could wound louder than anger. What Derek didn't know, what he couldn't possibly imagine, was that the man standing before him had written opinions that shaped the very laws Derek swore to uphold. The officer circled Marcus like a predator sizing up its prey. The courthouse loomed 50 feet away, its steps crowded with early arrivals. Clerks, attorneys, a few reporters setting up cameras for the upcoming ceremony. Some had stopped to watch, uneasy but silent. None dared to intervene. License and registration. Now, Marcus reached into his pocket slowly, his movements exaggerated, his breath shallow. His fingers brushed the edge of his old wallet, the same one his father had carried before a police bullet ended his life in 1975. No charges were ever filed. The thought passed through Marcus's mind like a ghost, but he kept his expression still. He pulled out the license, extending it toward Derek. The officer snatched it roughly, glanced at it, and then, deliberately, let it fall into a muddy puddle. "Oops," Derek said, smirking. "Clumsy me. Pick it up." Marcus stared at him, his face unreadable. Around them, the small crowd grew. Phones were raised now, quietly capturing everything. Somewhere in the distance, a woman's heels clicked rapidly against the pavement. Marcus knelt carefully, his knee creaking with age. He reached for the license, but before his hand could close around it, Derek's boot came down, grinding the card into the mud. "I said pick it up, you deaf old man." Inside the patrol car, Kyle zoomed in with his camera. Subject showing signs of aggression. He narrated loudly for the recording. Marcus hadn't done anything but breathe. The woman was running now. Black suit, hair pinned back, eyes sharp with outrage. Jennifer Mitchell, attorney at law, and one of the brightest new names in the city's legal circuit. She had clerked under Marcus years ago, though Derek couldn't have known that. "Officer Patterson, let him go," she said, her voice cutting through the tension. "Step back, ma'am." "Police business," Derek barked. "That man is. I don't care if you're the Queen of England. Step back before I arrest you too." Jennifer's jaw tightened. Marcus looked at her, calm even as Derek's hand tightened on his arm. "Jennifer," he said softly, "call Chief Justice Harrison. Tell him I'll be late for the swearing-in ceremony." For a split second, the words didn't register. Then Derek laughed, a cruel, barking sound. "Swearing-in ceremony? What are you, court janitor of the month?" Kyle had stepped out of the car, still filming, still entertained. Derek, he muttered uneasily. Dispatch is asking for an update. Tell them we've got one suspect detained. Possible 10 to 54. Kyle hesitated. The code meant dead body. It was an inside joke between them, but it made Marcus's stomach tighten. Derek was enjoying this too much. The officer grabbed Marcus by the shoulder and spun him around, forcing his hands against the hood of the car. The impact knocked his breath away. His briefcase hit the ground again, bursting open this time. Legal documents spilled out across the wet asphalt, some marked with golden seals, others stamped Supreme Court. Derek didn't notice. He was too busy flexing his authority. "You smell like alcohol," he said loudly, performing for the camera. "Public intoxication, disturbing the peace. Looks like we got ourselves a case." "That's enough," Jennifer shouted, her heels splashing as she reached them. "I said back off," Derek snapped, pushing her away with one hand while keeping Marcus pinned with the other. "Officer Patterson," she said, her voice trembling with fury, "you are assaulting a federal officer." "Yeah." Derek sneered. "Show me the badge." He didn't see the briefcase papers that Kyle had picked up. The younger officer froze. In his hand was a document bearing the golden seal of the state Supreme Court, embossed and unmistakable. Beneath it, in bold letters, "The Honorable Marcus Thompson, Associate Justice." Kyle's voice wavered. "Derek, you might want to see this." "What?" Derek snapped, still gripping Marcus's shoulder. Kyle held out the document. Derek's eyes darted over the text, his face draining of color. That's fake. Has to be." Jennifer stepped closer, holding up her phone. "Chief Justice Harrison wants to speak with you." "Now." Derek looked at the phone, then at Marcus, then at the growing circle of witnesses, half the courthouse staff, attorneys, and now even a few reporters. His hand began to shake. 5 minutes ago, Marcus said quietly, his voice steady and cutting through the tension, "You asked if I was a janitor. I've been cleaning up messes in this courthouse for 20 years, but not the kind you think." A siren wailed in the distance. Derek's radio crackled. "Patterson, what's your 20? Captain Wilson is en route." The sound of approaching sirens should have brought relief, but Marcus could tell it wouldn't. Something darker was coming. Derek's panic turned violent. He slammed Marcus against the hood again, hard enough that the older man gasped. A thin line of blood ran down his forehead where it met the metal. "You think a fake ID makes you special?" Derek's voice broke with desperation. "Kyle, cuff him." But Kyle didn't move. He was staring at the Supreme Court documents scattered in the puddles, each one with Marcus's name and official seals. His phone had stopped recording. "Derek, maybe we should cuff him." The command came out as a roar, but Derek's trembling hands betrayed him. The handcuffs slipped, clattering to the ground and skittering under the car. As he bent down to retrieve them, Marcus's wallet fell from his jacket. It hit the pavement, flipping open. Something golden rolled out, a medallion, heavy and gleaming in the morning light. Jennifer's breath caught. The medallion spun across the wet ground before coming to rest at her feet. She picked it up, staring in disbelief. "Oh my God," she whispered. The engraved seal of the state Supreme Court shimmered under the light, Marcus Thompson's name carved beneath it. Only 5 such medallions existed in the entire state, awarded at the swearing-in ceremony set to begin in less than an hour. Jennifer turned, her voice breaking. "Judge Thompson, I'm so sorry. I didn't recognize you without your robes." Derek straightened too fast, smacking his head against the car mirror. "Judge," he stammered. Kyle's grip on the documents loosened, and the papers fell, scattered by the wind. Every page bore the truth of Marcus's identity. "Derek, we need to go," Kyle whispered. "No," Derek said, his face now blotched with purple rage. "It's fake. All of it. He's lying." He grabbed Marcus again, yanking him around. "You're going to jail, you lying piece of—" "Patterson!" The voice boomed across the lot. Captain Wilson's unmarked car screeched to a stop. A tall, broad man with gray hair and a lifetime of command in his voice stepped out. His eyes swept the scene. The crowd, the blood, the scattered papers, Jennifer clutching the medallion. "Let him go," Wilson ordered. "Captain," this man was resisting. "Now!" Derek froze, then reluctantly released Marcus. The judge straightened, blood on his brow, mud on his coat, but his dignity intact. He looked at Wilson, his expression calm but deadly serious. "Captain Wilson," he said, "I assume you know who I am." Wilson's face was unreadable. "Judge Thompson, there's been a misunderstanding." "Has there?" Marcus reached down and picked up his muddy license from the ground. "Your officer told me I don't belong here. Said, you people think we own the place." The crowd murmured. Someone shouted, "We saw everything." Wilson turned, eyes hard. "Judge Thompson, I sincerely apologize. Officer Patterson is young. He didn't know. He knew enough to assault a 62-year-old man for existing in a parking lot." Marcus said. "The question is, Captain, did you know?" For a brief second, something flickered in Wilson's eyes, an involuntary twitch Marcus didn't miss. He turned toward Derek. "Give me your badge and gun, Patterson." Derek's hands shook as he unclipped his badge, but as he handed it over, he whispered something low and venomous. "You said to send a message." The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. The crowd leaned forward. Jennifer's phone was still recording. She'd caught everything. Wilson's jaw tightened, but his hand subtly reached for his radio and switched it off. "Judge Thompson," he said evenly, "let's discuss this privately." "Privately?" Marcus's eyes narrowed. "Like your officer's private message?" The crowd stirred. Jennifer stepped forward, holding up her phone. "Captain, I have everything on video, including what Officer Patterson just said." The air around them thickened. The moment had changed. Authority was shifting. The story that began as humiliation was now turning into revelation. And though Marcus didn't yet know it, the confrontation in that parking lot would ignite a reckoning that reached all the way to the top of the state and far beyond. Captain Wilson stood in the middle of the courthouse parking lot, the morning light glinting off the silver strands in his hair. His posture was rigid, his jaw clenched so tight it looked like it might crack. He took in the scene, the blood streaking down Marcus Thompson's forehead, the documents fluttering across the pavement, the circle of onlookers recording everything on their phones. Jennifer Mitchell stood off to the side, her phone still raised, the medallion gleaming in her palm. "Let's calm down," Wilson said evenly, but his eyes betrayed a storm behind a mask. "Judge Thompson, I assure you, this will be handled properly." Marcus's expression was unreadable. "Properly?" he repeated. "Your officer assaulted a man he thought beneath him. He called me a liar. Then he said something about sending a message. Tell me, Captain, what message was that supposed to be?" Wilson's hand twitched near his radio again, though he didn't answer. The crowd was growing thicker by the minute. Attorneys, clerks, even a few news reporters who had arrived early for the swearing-in ceremony. The sound of phones clicking filled the air. "Patterson," Wilson said at last, turning to Derek. "Give me your weapon and step aside." Derek hesitated. His lips moved before his brain caught up. "You said—" "I said step aside." Derek's words died on his tongue. He unclipped his sidearm, handing it to his captain with trembling hands. But as he did, he leaned closer and hissed under his breath, "You said to send a message." Wilson didn't respond, but Jennifer, standing only a few feet away, caught every syllable. Her phone was still recording. She took a cautious step forward. "Captain, I think the judge has a right to know what your officer means by that." Wilson's face hardened. "Ms. Mitchell, this is a police matter. I suggest you step back." Jennifer didn't move. "No, Captain," she said. "This is a civil rights matter, and it's already on camera." For the first time, Wilson's composure cracked. His hand went to his radio, switching it off with a soft click. "Judge Thompson," he said in a quieter tone, "let's discuss this inside, away from the crowd." Marcus tilted his head. "Privately? Like your officer's private instructions?" The murmur from the crowd grew louder. Derek shifted nervously, his boots grinding against the pavement. Jennifer raised her voice so everyone could hear. "Captain, everything your officer just said is on this video, including the part where he claimed you ordered it." Kyle, Derek's young partner, took an uneasy step backward. His foot brushed something on the ground, a small black notebook half buried in the mud. He bent to pick it up, flipping it open out of reflex. The pages were smeared but legible. his face drained of color. Names, addresses, license plate numbers. 5 entries. All of them belonged to recently appointed black officials, judges, council members, administrators. And one name stood out on the 4th line. Judge M. Thompson, Toyota Camry. Usually alone, 7:30 a.m. Jennifer saw it too. She stepped forward, but Wilson's boot came down hard, crushing the notebook into the mud. That's evidence, she said sharply. It's trash, Wilson replied, voice cold and clipped. Patterson looked up, confused. Captain, that's my notebook. Wilson didn't look at him. You acted alone, Patterson. You've been having problems. Drinking. Everyone knows it. That's a lie, Derek shouted. You gave us the list. You told us these people needed to learn their place. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Cameras were everywhere now. The truth was no longer containable. Marcus crouched slowly, deliberately, and retrieved the muddy notepad from under Wilson's boot. The pages were smeared, but the ink still bled through. He read the 4th line aloud. Judge M. Thompson, Toyota Camry, usually alone, 7:30 a.m. He looked up. Interesting details for a random traffic stop, Captain. Wilson's jaw flexed, but before he could speak, his radio, supposedly switched off, crackled with static. Then came a voice, distorted but clear enough for everyone to hear. Wilson, what's your status? 3 more targets today. Remember, the mayor's next. Every phone in the crowd caught it. Heads turned toward Wilson. He fumbled for the radio, shutting it off completely, but the damage was done. His mask had shattered. Marcus stepped forward, blood drying on his temple, his voice measured and heavy with authority. The mayor is a target. Jennifer had already dialed. I'm calling Mayor Washington right now. Put that phone down, Wilson barked. Or what? She demanded. You'll arrest me, too? Add me to your list. Captain, Kyle's voice trembled. Captain, I can't do this anymore. He reached into his pocket and pulled out another small notebook, identical to Derek's. He gave us all lists, Kyle said, his voice breaking. Every black official elected or appointed in the last year. Derek spun toward his partner. Kyle, shut up. But Kyle was beyond fear now. I've got kids, man. I can't lie anymore. Judge Thompson, there's more. The captain's been getting paid. There's an envelope in his car right now. $50,000 from some group called. He didn't finish. Wilson moved fast, faster than anyone expected for a man his size. His fist crashed into Kyle's jaw, sending the younger officer sprawling to the pavement. Screams erupted. Phones zoomed in. The crowd surged forward but didn't interfere. They didn't need to. The cameras were the new witnesses. Marcus stood still, calm amid the chaos. Captain Wilson, he said quietly, you're under arrest. Wilson laughed, breathless and disbelieving. You can't arrest me. You're a judge, not a cop. You're right, Marcus said, pulling out his phone. But the FBI can. He dialed. Agent Harrison. Yes, this is Judge Thompson. We have a situation at the courthouse. Bring everyone. For the first time, Wilson's face went pale. He took a step back, his hand twitching toward his holster. 20 phones lifted higher, lenses trained on him. Don't, Jennifer warned. He froze. You don't understand, Wilson stammered. This is bigger than you think. The people funding this. Save it for your trial, Marcus said. Moments later, sirens filled the air, not the high-pitched whine of local police, but the low, deliberate wail of government vehicles. 3 black SUVs swept into the lot from different directions, boxing in the patrol cars. The engines idled in perfect synchronization, their presence heavy and final. The doors opened. Men and women in dark suits stepped out. FBI agents, their jackets marked in bold yellow letters. Leading them was Agent Harrison, tall and broad, his face carved with the weight of too many seen injustices. He looked first at Marcus, bloodied but standing tall, then at Wilson, whose hand still hovered dangerously close to his weapon. Judge Thompson, Harrison said with a nod, we got your call. Wilson turned to run, but he didn't make it 3 steps before a ring of agents surrounded him. No guns drawn. I didn't need them. The air itself had turned against him. Captain Wilson, Harrison said, voice steady as steel, You're under arrest for conspiracy to violate civil rights, assault, and corruption. You don't understand, Wilson pleaded. I'm not the one in charge. There are people. We know, Harrison interrupted. The White Heritage Fund. The name hit the crowd like a physical blow. Whispers rippled through the air. Harrison held up a tablet, the screen glowing with bank records. $50,000 deposited into your account yesterday. Another 100,000 spread over the past year. Gasps erupted. Derek's head snapped up. 100,000? You told us this was about protecting the community. Wilson turned on him, fury and panic colliding. Shut your mouth, Patterson. No, Derek said, his voice shaking. You said these people were dangerous. You said they destroy our city. You never said anything about money. Marcus stepped forward, holding the muddy notepad like a weapon. Officer Patterson, do you want to tell us the truth now? Derek looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. The blood on the judge's face. The quiet dignity that refused to yield. The pain that went deeper than any physical wound. We had meetings, Derek began, voice trembling. Every week. The captain would give us lists, names, addresses. Told us to make their lives hell. Stop them. Make them quit. Make them leave town. Harrison's tone sharpened. Who else was involved? 12 officers, maybe more. Derek's legs gave out. He sank to his knees. Judge Thompson, I'm sorry. I didn't know. Marcus's voice was low and devastating. You didn't know I was a judge. But you knew I was a human being, and that didn't matter to you. Silence followed. Even the engines seemed to hush. Then another car arrived, a sleek black sedan. 2 bodyguards stepped out first. Then Mayor Jamal Washington, tall, commanding, his presence impossible to ignore. He strode forward, his eyes taking in everything. Wilson in cuffs, Derek on the ground, Kyle bleeding from the jaw, and Marcus standing like a monument of calm. Captain, the mayor said, voice resonant. I heard my name on your radio. Wilson said nothing. The mayor opened a folder he'd been carrying. 3 days ago, I received this. Inside was a photograph, himself stepping out of his car, a red circle drawn around his head like a target. Now I know who sent it. Jennifer's camera was still rolling. Mayor Washington, she said, Judge Thompson was assaulted. We have video evidence of a conspiracy. The mayor's eyes blazed. We have more than that. Agent Harrison, Captain Wilson owns 3 houses, each paid in full this year. His salary is $70,000. Do the math. Wilson's color had drained entirely. I want a lawyer. You'll get one, Harrison said curtly. Take him. As 2 agents moved forward, Wilson made a desperate gamble. He pointed at Marcus, shouting, He attacked me. Everyone saw it. He resisted arrest. The crowd exploded in protest. Liar. We saw everything. Harrison pulled out his own phone. Captain, we've been investigating you for 6 months. We have recordings of your meetings, your payments, your lists. We have everything. He turned to Kyle and Derek. We know about all 12 officers. Kyle, jaw swollen, forced himself upright. I'll testify, he said. I'll tell you everything. Derek was crying now, raw, unfiltered tears. Judge Thompson, please. I have a family. I was just following orders. Marcus looked at him with something that wasn't pity, but wasn't cruelty either. So were the officers who killed my father, he said softly. The entire parking lot went silent. My father was stopped by police outside a courthouse in 1975. Marcus continued, his voice carrying across the crowd. They said he didn't belong. Said he was threatening them. They shot him 7 times. No charges were ever filed. Derek couldn't meet his gaze. But here's the difference, Marcus said. I believe in justice, not revenge. You'll face trial. You'll have lawyers. You'll have rights. All the rights you try to deny me. Wilson began to laugh, a hollow, broken sound. You think this ends with me? The fund has people everywhere. Judges, politicians, police chiefs in 20 cities. Then we'll arrest them all, Harrison said. One of the agents emerged from Wilson's car, holding a thick envelope. Harrison pulled on gloves, opened it, and revealed stacks of $100 bills. Blood money, he muttered. Then the radio in Wilson's car crackled again, unprompted. Captain Wilson, the Patterson situation under control? We need those targets handled today. The donors are getting impatient. Harrison picked up the radio, his voice steady. This is Special Agent Harrison, FBI. Your operation is over. For a moment, there was only silence. Then the faint sound of someone running, doors slamming, engines starting throughout the city, rats scattering from a sinking ship. Marcus turned to Derek, still kneeling. Stand up. Derek rose shakily, tears streaming down his face. Look at me, Marcus said. You're going to prison. But you're also going to have a chance I never got with my father's killers. A chance to make things right. Tell the truth. Help us stop this. Yes, sir, Derek whispered. Yes, Your Honor. I'll do anything. Start by remembering this moment, Marcus said. His tone softened, but the weight of justice lingered. Remember what it feels like to be powerless, to be afraid, to have someone with a badge decide you don't deserve dignity. He turned toward Harrison. Agent, I'll need medical attention, and then I have a swearing-in ceremony to attend. The crowd erupted in applause, cautious at first, then thunderous. The sound rolled across the courthouse walls like judgment itself. As Wilson was led away in cuffs, his face gray with fear, and Derek stood trembling beside the agents. Marcus Thompson straightened his coat, his blood drying like a seal of truth. Justice was coming. Not vengeance, justice. There was a difference, and this was only the beginning. The story of Judge Marcus Thompson's assault spread like wildfire. Within 24 hours, the video of the parking lot confrontation had reached every corner of the country. Hashtags trended across social media. Headlines screamed in bold type. And by the next morning, every major network led with the same footage. A respected black judge bleeding on the courthouse pavement while a police captain tried to silence the truth. The Department of Justice opened an emergency inquiry. FBI task forces swarmed multiple precincts, seizing documents, hard drives, and bank records. Within a week, dozens of arrests were made across the state. Officers, administrators, even a few judges. But that was only the surface. What the world was about to learn ran deeper than any single department. In a high-security briefing room in Washington, D.C., Marcus Thompson, still wearing a small bandage on his forehead, sat opposite Agent Harrison, Mayor Jamal Washington, and Attorney Jennifer Mitchell. Piles of evidence covered the table: bank transfers, encrypted emails, meeting notes, and ledgers retrieved from Captain Wilson's home. The White Heritage Fund, Harrison said, tapping the files, isn't just a hate group. It's a financial network, a web of donors, politicians, and officers. Their stated goal is to restore the natural order. Marcus's gaze was steady, which means eliminate progress, erase equality, and punish anyone who dares to lead while black. Jennifer leaned forward, scrolling through documents. The money trail runs through shell companies in 3 states. We've traced payments from industrial magnates, political action committees, and even charitable foundations. Every transaction is designed to look legitimate. Mayor Washington rubbed his temple, and they targeted every major black or minority official in this state. They had lists, patterns, surveillance schedules. Harrison nodded grimly. We've intercepted communications referencing Phase 3, permanent solutions. They weren't stopping at harassment or intimidation. They were planning assassinations. Silence filled the room. Marcus exhaled slowly. Then we dismantle them in the only place they can't manipulate, the courtroom. He didn't yet know that destiny was already preparing that seat for him. 3 months later, the state stood still. The courthouse steps were crowded with cameras, reporters, and citizens from every background. Signs waved in the air. Asterisk, no more lists. Justice for all. In the hate network. Asterisk. The case had been named Asterisk United States v. the White Heritage Fund Network Asterisk, and it would become one of the most consequential trials in modern American history. 42 defendants sat behind bulletproof glass. Police officers, judges, business leaders, and politicians, including Senator James Bradford, the man whose signature had appeared on the fund's government-funded invoices. And presiding over the case, newly appointed as Chief Justice, was Marcus Thompson. When he entered the courtroom that morning, every person rose. The gold medallion, the same one that Derek Patterson had ground into the mud, now hung proudly against his black robes, gleaming under the lights. The gavel struck once. This court is now in session. The prosecutor, Jennifer Mitchell, stood at the state's table, no longer the young lawyer from that parking lot, but a fierce voice for justice. Her face was composed, her tone resolute. Your Honor, the prosecution will demonstrate that the White Heritage Fund was not merely an ideology, but an organized domestic terror network, a criminal enterprise designed to suppress democracy and civil rights through intimidation, bribery, and violence. Across the room, Senator Bradford scowled, his expensive suit doing little to hide the sweat on his forehead. Beside him sat Captain Wilson, his hands cuffed, jaw tight, eyes hollow from months of confinement. The defense team objected, claiming the term terror network was prejudicial. Marcus overruled them without hesitation. The jury will hear all evidence and decide for themselves whether terror was or was not their tool. Jennifer called her first witness, Officer Derek Patterson. The room stirred. A man in orange prison clothes was led to the stand, shackled but standing upright. He looked older than his years, worn by guilt and sleepless nights. When he raised his hand to swear the oath, his voice cracked. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Jennifer approached. Mr. Patterson, describe your role under Captain Wilson. Derek swallowed hard. We called a patrol and pressure. Every week, the captain gave us lists, names of people we were told were corrupt, unfit, or dangerous. They were all black. He said we needed to remind them who ran this city. And how did you remind them? Derek's hands trembled. We stopped them for nothing, harassed them, wrote fake tickets, broke tail lights, then cited them for it. Some officers went further. Did you ever plant evidence? Yes. His voice was barely audible. On one man, Michael Chun. He was a civil rights attorney. He recorded us roughing up a councilman. We planted cocaine in his car to discredit him. He's been in prison for 3 years. A ripple of outrage swept the courtroom. Marcus's face remained solemn, but his eyes darkened. Jennifer nodded slowly. And what about Antoine Williams, the activist who was killed during a traffic stop last October? Derek's throat tightened. Captain Wilson ordered it. Said Williams was getting too loud about police reform. He told Officer Mitchell to make it look like Williams reached for a weapon. Did Mr. Williams have a weapon? No, Derek said, tears gathering. We planted it. After the shooting, Wilson said, good work. The fund will pay each of you $100 grand. Gasps filled the air. A woman in the gallery sobbed quietly. Mr. Patterson, Jennifer said softly. Do you have proof of that conversation? Derek nodded. Yes, I recorded it. He pulled a small phone from an evidence bag. The audio played through the courtroom speakers, Wilson's voice unmistakable, cold, commanding. Asterisk, Williams dies tonight. Make it clean. The fund will handle the payout. Asterisk. The sound hit like thunder. The defense tried to object, but Marcus's gavel silenced them. The evidence is admissible. Continue. On the stand, Derek's voice broke completely. I kept the recording for a year, too scared to come forward. But when I saw Judge Thompson bleeding in that parking lot, I couldn't live with it anymore. Jennifer's gaze softened. You understand the gravity of your confession? Yes, ma'am. Derek looked toward Marcus. I know I deserve prison, but I'll testify against everyone. Every meeting, every order, every name. Marcus nodded slightly, not as a judge acknowledging testimony, but as a man acknowledging courage. The prosecutor moved on. Your Honor, we submit People's Exhibit 247. The projector lit the wall with financial records, hundreds of payments from front companies tied to the White Heritage Fund. Each transfer linked back to Senator Bradford's consulting firm. Jennifer's voice carried across the chamber. These payments total more than $4 billion. They funded officers, judges, and political candidates willing to serve the fund's mission, to restore the natural order where, and I quote, decisions are made by those genetically suited to lead. Murmurs filled the courtroom. Some jurors looked physically ill. Senator Bradford jumped to his feet, pointing at the prosecutor. This is fabricated. A witch hunt. Marcus's tone was quiet but absolute. Senator Bradford, you will have your turn to speak. Sit down or be removed. Bradford sat, seething. Jennifer turned back to the jury. Ladies and gentlemen, what we are seeing is not a few rogue officers. This is a coordinated attempt to turn back the clock on American justice. The White Heritage Fund infiltrated our institutions, our courts, our very laws. Over the next 2 weeks, the prosecution built an unbreakable wall of evidence. Bank statements, intercepted messages, and testimony from officers who flipped under plea deals. Every revelation widened the scope of the conspiracy. The White Heritage Fund had members in 20 states, shell companies offshore, and influence reaching into Congress. But it was what came next that changed everything. Jennifer stood one morning, her tone grave. Your Honor, we have a new witness. She came forward last night. The heavy doors opened. A woman in her 60s walked in, graceful, pale, her pearl necklace glinting beneath courtroom lights. Her presence drew a collective gasp. Martha Bradford, Jennifer announced, wife of the defendant, Senator James Bradford. The senator shot to his feet. You can't do this. Spousal privilege. Spousal privilege does not apply in an ongoing criminal conspiracy, Marcus ruled. Mrs. Bradford, please take the stand. Martha's hands trembled slightly as she placed them on the Bible. I do swear. Jennifer approached gently. Mrs. Bradford, why have you come forward now? Martha looked at her husband for a long moment. Because I saw the video of Judge Thompson bleeding on those courthouse steps. That could have been my grandson. My daughter married a black man. James disowned her for it. But I knew, deep down, that one day this hate would turn on our own family too. The senator's face went purple with rage. You're lying. I kept records, Martha said calmly. 20 years' worth. Gasps spread across the courtroom. Every meeting, every payment discussed over dinner. Every name he bragged about controlling. I stored everything in a safety deposit box in case he ever turned on me. She reached into her handbag and produced a flash drive. It contains every email, text, and document. It also includes their plans for what they called Phase 4. Jennifer took the drive carefully, eyes widening. Phase 4. Martha nodded. If the legal system failed them, they had a plan for direct action, assassinations disguised as accidents. 200 targets across the nation. The word struck like lightning. FBI agents in the gallery rose immediately, moving toward the evidence table. The judge's gavel struck once. This court is in recess. The FBI will take custody of all defendants. No bail. Senator Bradford shouted. You can't hold us all. You're making a mockery of justice. Marcus looked down from the bench. Senator, you plotted to murder 200 Americans. You funded terrorism. You corrupted the courts. I can and will hold you. The defendants were let out one by one, their faces drained of power. Wilson's eyes were hollow. Bradford's rage dissolved into panic. Cameras flashed as agents escorted them away. When the noise settled, Dara Patterson was brought forward for sentencing on his guilty plea. Marcus studied him for a long moment. Officer Patterson, you cooperated fully. Without your testimony, many of these criminals would go free. But you also participated in grave crimes. Derek nodded, tears glistening. I understand, Your Honor. I sentence you to 5 years in federal prison. Marcus said, with eligibility for parole in 2, provided you continue to assist the investigation. Derek swallowed hard. Thank you, Your Honor. I'll use that time to become better. See that you do, Marcus replied. As he was led away, Derek passed Michael Chun, the lawyer he had once framed, now free and working alongside Jennifer as special counsel for the state. Their eyes met briefly. I'm sorry, Derek whispered. Chun looked at him for a long time. Then make it mean something, he said. When you get out, help us fix what you broke. When the courtroom finally emptied, Marcus remained seated on the bench. 42 chairs in the defendant's box stood empty, the ghosts of a network that once believed itself untouchable. The system wasn't just being corrected, it was being reborn. Months passed. The country was changing. The president announced a nationwide task force on domestic extremism. Congress introduced the Thompson Reform Act, mandating transparency in all police disciplinary proceedings. Donations to the White Heritage Fund and its subsidiaries were frozen and seized. But for Marcus, the fight wasn't political, it was moral. Each night, he stayed late in his chambers, reading letters from ordinary citizens who'd found the courage to speak up about their own experiences. Teachers, firefighters, nurses. Each letter ended the same way. Asterisk, we saw what you did, and we believe again. Asterisk, it was on one of those quiet evenings that Jennifer knocked on his door. Your Honor, she said, stepping in, the verdict is unanimous. All 42 defendants, guilty on every count. Marcus closed his eyes for a long moment. Justice, he murmured. At last. She smiled faintly. The people outside are already celebrating. He rose, adjusting his robe. Let's join them. Outside, the courthouse steps were packed. Thousands of people from every race, faith, and generation. Signs waved in the air. Music blared. Tears were shed openly. Reporters shouted questions as Marcus emerged beside Jennifer and Mayor Washington. Behind them stood Harrison, his expression unreadable but proud. Judge Thompson, a reporter called, what does this verdict mean for America? Marcus looked over the crowd, the faces reflecting hope and exhaustion. It means, he said, that the law still belongs to the people. It means that truth can bleed, but not die. And it means that justice, when enough of us demand it, can still rise. The applause rolled like thunder. In the front row sat Sarah Williams, mother of the slain activist Antoine. She held a photograph of her son against her heart, tears glistening. When Marcus met her gaze, she mouthed a single word, thank you. He nodded gently. Justice was for him too, he whispered. The mayor took the microphone next. Today, 23 people have been arrested, from beat cops to a state senator. The White Heritage Fund's assets, $14 million, have been frozen. But we are not done. The crowd cheered again. A voice shouted from the back. They own everything. Nothing will change. Marcus smiled faintly. Do they? Agent Harrison stepped forward, holding a laptop connected to a projector. The courthouse wall became a screen filled with documents. Names, transactions, internal memos. These, Harrison announced, are the fund's secret files. Senator Bradford kept everything on a private server. Members, donors' plans. We have it all. The names scrolled past. Business tycoons, judges, police chiefs, even a congressman. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Every person on this list, Harrison continued, is under investigation. This isn't the end of justice. It's the beginning. Jennifer stepped up beside him. And what about the victims? She asked. The ones driven from their homes, fired from their jobs, the ones who never got their day in court. She turned toward the crowd, gesturing. Dozens of people stepped forward, black, white, Latino, Asian, all holding framed photos. These are the victims, Jennifer said. 37 people forced from their careers. 12 who fled their towns. For who died under suspicious circumstances. Those cases are being reopened as murders. An elderly woman stepped forward, her voice trembling. They killed my son, she said. Said he resisted arrest. He was a teacher. Never even had a speeding ticket. The crowd went silent, grief mingling with fury. Marcus took the microphone once more. Which brings me to Officer Patterson. All eyes turned to the man in orange, standing between two marshals. Derek raised his head. You want forgiveness? Marcus asked. Then stand up and tell the truth here before them all. Derek hesitated, then rose, his chains rattling softly. I terrorized innocent people, he began. We called a patrol and pressure. We followed them home, stopped them daily, made up violations, planted evidence. At least 50 people, maybe more. Didn't he fight back? Marcus asked. One did. Michael Chun. He recorded us. So we planted drugs in his car. He's been in prison for 3 years. Gasps. Cries of outrage. Mr. Chun was released yesterday, Marcus said. All charges dropped. He's suing the city, and he'll win. Derek's knees buckled. I'm sorry, he whispered. Sorry doesn't bring back 3 years, Marcus said. but your testimony might prevent 30 more. Are you prepared to testify against every person involved? Yes, Your Honor, even if they threaten my family. I have to. He lifted his head, tears streaking his face. My son asked me if I was a bad guy. He's 6. I told him I was, but I'm trying to be better. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. From a transport van nearby, a voice suddenly bellowed. Captain Wilson, chained and furious. You're all dead. They have people everywhere, judges, governors. You can't stop them all. Marcus walked to the van window, meeting Wilson's wild eyes. You're right, Captain, he said calmly. We can't stop them all today, but we'll stop them one by one, case by case. Your network took years to build. We'll take years to tear it down, but we will tear it down. The van's door slammed shut, drowning out Wilson's final scream. Mayor Washington took the stage again, his voice resolute. Effective immediately, every officer in this city will undergo civil rights retraining. Body cameras are mandatory. A civilian oversight board will review every complaint. That's not enough, someone yelled. You're right, the mayor said. It's not enough, but it's a start. Change doesn't happen in a day, but it starts today. Marcus stepped forward once more, his voice carrying above the noise. 47 years ago, my father died on courthouse steps like these. No justice came for him. Today, I stand on these same steps, and justice has come. Not because I'm a judge, but because good people refuse to look away. He gestured toward Jennifer, Harrison, Derek, and the crowd. Because cameras recorded truth. Because citizens stood witness. Because even those who did wrong found the courage to do right. Applause rose like a wave. It built and built until it rolled across the courthouse plaza, echoing through the city streets. For the first time in decades, justice didn't feel like a word in a book. It felt alive. And for Marcus Thompson, that was enough for now. A year had passed since that fateful morning in the courthouse parking lot, since blood mixed with rainwater and a nation's conscience stirred awake. Where asphalt once ran slick with humiliation, a memorial garden now grew. The courthouse had preserved the spot, transforming it into a place of remembrance and rebirth. Lavender and white lilies bloomed around a bronze plaque engraved with simple, heavy words. On this ground, courage defeated hatred. May we never forget. May we never repeat. Marcus Thompson stood before it, a soft wind tugging at his robe. Time had touched his face, deepening the lines of wisdom and sorrow, but his eyes still held the same calm intensity. He wasn't here as a judge today, not in any official sense. He was here as a witness to memory, to change, to hope. Around him, hundreds of people had gathered for the first annual Justice Day. Families, officers, activists, and ordinary citizens filled the courtyard. Children drew with chalk on the pavement, sketching hearts and rainbows over the place where violence had once lived. A gospel choir sang softly from the steps, their voices rising like prayer. Marcus watched them with quiet pride. A year ago, that parking lot had been a battleground. Now it was a garden of unity. Yet deep inside, he knew how fragile progress could be. Judge Thompson, came a familiar voice. Marcus turned. Dara Patterson stood a few feet away, dressed in civilian clothes. The orange prison uniform was gone, replaced by a plain shirt and jeans. He carried himself differently, shoulders squared but humble, eyes lowered, every movement deliberate. The years had stripped him of arrogance, leaving something quieter, more human. Thank you for letting me attend, Derek said. It means more than I can say. Marcus studied him carefully. You earned the right to stand here, Derek. Through truth. Through what came after. Derek gave a small nod. I've been working with Michael Chen's foundation, Bridges Forward. We go to police academies and community centers, talk to recruits about bias and power. I tell them my story, show them what I did to you. Not to gain sympathy, but to stop it from happening again. He opened his jacket and pulled out a worn notebook filled with scrawled notes and lecture outlines. 3 meetings a week, sometimes more. One recruit quit after hearing me talk, said he joined for the wrong reasons. Maybe that's a start. Marcus smiled faintly. Maybe it is. Redemption's not a single act. It's a lifetime of choosing to do right. For a moment, neither spoke. The choir shifted songs, the rhythm pulsing softly through the crowd like a heartbeat. Then another figure approached. Jennifer Mitchell, dressed now in formal black robes. She had come far since that chaotic morning. No longer just a passionate young lawyer. She was now the youngest judge in the state's history. Judge Thompson, she said warmly, holding a small velvet box. The city council voted unanimously. They wanted to give you this. She opened the box. Inside lay a silver key, the key to the city. And with it, she continued, an apology that can never be enough. Marcus took it gently, feeling its weight. This isn't mine alone, he said. He turned to face the crowd, his voice carrying over the music. This belongs to every person who stood witness that day. Every citizen who recorded, who spoke up, who refused to look away. This belongs to all of you. The crowd broke into applause. Among them, faces shone with tears and pride. Some were victims of past injustice. Others were reformed officers, community leaders, students. For the first time in years, hope didn't feel naive. It felt earned. An elderly woman stepped forward from a gathering, her cane tapping softly on the pavement. She wore a simple black dress, her eyes red but steady. Judge Thompson, she said quietly. I'm Sarah Williams, Antoine's mother. The crowd fell silent. Everyone knew her name. Her son, Antoine Williams, had been one of the victims murdered under Captain Wilson's orders, the activist whose death had first ignited Marcus's investigation. Marcus's expression softened. Mrs. Williams, he said gently. My boy would have been 32 today, she said, her voice trembling but strong. They stole his future. But seeing change helps. It doesn't heal everything, but it helps. She turned toward Derek, her eyes piercing. You helped convict his killers. I can't forgive what you did, but I can thank you for what you're doing now. Derek's throat worked, but no words came. He only nodded, tears streaming silently down his cheeks. From the front row, a small girl, maybe 10, tugged at Marcus's robe. He bent down. What's your name, sweetheart? Aisha, she said shyly. Aisha Thompson. Marcus smiled. Good name. My daddy says you're a hero, she said. Marcus chuckled softly. I'm not a hero, Aisha. I just refuse to be silent. Heroes are people like your daddy, who teach you to stand up for what's right. She grinned. My daddy's a police officer. One of the new ones. Marcus looked up. Near the edge of the crowd stood a young black officer, tall and proud, watching them quietly. His badge glinted in the sunlight. Officer Thompson, Marcus said, rising. No relation, I assume. The young man laughed nervously. No, sir. But I joined because of you, because of everything that happened. I figured the only way to change things was from the inside. It's hard, though. Old attitudes die slow. Marcus nodded. They always do. But courage has a way of outliving fear. The officer smiled faintly. Chief Harrison doesn't tolerate nonsense anymore. Not in our precinct. Marcus raised a brow. Chief Harrison? The officer grinned. Yes, sir. Agent Harrison retired from the bureau and took over the department. Things are different now. Real change, Marcus thought. Not slogans. Not speeches. Structure. Accountability. The ceremony continued. The choir swelled, their harmonies filling the courtyard like sunlight. Mayor Jamal Washington took the podium, announcing new reforms. The Justice Scholarship Fund for law students from marginalized communities, the Harrison Initiative for police transparency, and the Antoine Williams Fellowship for civic activists. Each announcement drew cheers and applause. When the choir finished, Marcus and Jennifer stood side by side, watching the crowd begin to disperse. Children chased bubbles near the garden. Reporters packed up their cameras. The scent of flowers lingered in the air. Do you think it'll last? Jennifer asked quietly. Nothing lasts without vigilance, Marcus said. But look, he gestured toward the far side of the plaza, where a group of new officers, black, white, Latino, Asian, laughed with local kids, showing them how their body cameras worked, explaining what accountability meant. That wouldn't have happened 2 years ago. Jennifer smiled softly. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then looked up with a grin. 3 more convictions today. Wilson's network in Chicago. The ripples are spreading. Marcus nodded. Good. Justice has long arms. Derek approached one last time before leaving. His eyes were tired but sincere. "Judge Thompson," he said, voice low, "my son asked me again if I'm a bad guy." Marcus turned to face him. "What did you tell him?" "I told him I was. But I'm trying to be better." He said that's what superheroes do. They change. Marcus smiled gently. "Smart kid. He gets it from his mother," Derek said quietly. "She left me, but she lets me see him now. Says maybe, someday, if I keep changing." He trailed off, eyes distant with both pain and hope. "Then keep changing," Marcus said. "Every day." Derek nodded. He extended his hand, not as a plea for forgiveness, but as an offering of understanding. Marcus took it, holding it firmly. "Make the work matter," he said. "I will." As Derek walked away, the choir began again, singing an old hymn about freedom and grace. Marcus turned back toward the plaque, running his hand over the bronze letters. Courage defeated hatred. He thought of his father, the man shot outside a courthouse decades ago. If he could see this now, Marcus knew he'd be proud. Not because his son had risen in rank or reputation, but because he'd chosen justice over vengeance. 5 years later, the same courthouse steps overflowed again, not with anger this time, but with celebration. Banners fluttered in the warm breeze, a new chapter in justice. Marcus Thompson stood at the top of the stairs, dressed in a dark suit instead of robes. Retirement day. Real retirement this time. His chambers were already packed into boxes, his office bare except for one object left on the desk, the gold medallion, now polished and shining. The same medallion Dara Patterson had once ground into the mud. It had outlasted hatred, outlasted scandal, and had become something greater than a symbol. It had become a promise. A knock came on the door. Jennifer entered, now State Attorney General. Her presence carried the same mix of fire and calm Marcus had always admired. "The ceremony's about to start," she said. "I'm coming," Marcus replied, picking up the medallion and turning it in his hand. One last time. Together they stepped outside. The plaza was filled again. Citizens, officials, students, police officers, and families. Reporters' cameras lined the edges. Among the crowd, Marcus spotted familiar faces. Derek Patterson stood near the front, no longer in chains but in a gray suit, representing the Reform Through Truth Foundation, a nonprofit he'd built to train officers in ethics and empathy. Beside him stood Officer Thompson, now a captain, leading the city's new community policing division. Further back, Marcus saw Kyle, Wilson's former partner, now teaching de-escalation tactics to recruits. Life had come full circle. Even from the ashes of wrongdoing, growth had bloomed. Wilson himself was gone, serving a life sentence without parole. Senator Bradford had died behind bars 2 years earlier. The White Heritage Fund had dissolved, its remaining assets redirected to victims' families. As Marcus reached the podium, the crowd quieted. He looked out at them, so many faces, so many stories, and felt the weight of all that had been lost and all that had been won. 5 years ago, he began, I stood on these steps bloodied and broken. Today I stand here whole, not because of my title, but because of you. He paused, scanning the crowd. Every person who recorded, who witnessed, who refused to be silent. You are the reason justice prevailed. You are the reason truth rose again. He held up the medallion, its surface catching the sunlight. This never gave me power. You did, the moment you stood witness to injustice. He turned toward the man standing beside him. *** Michael Chun, ***, the lawyer once framed, now the state's newest Supreme Court justice. Justice Chun, Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion, it's time. Michael stepped forward, his eyes glistening. Marcus placed the medallion around his neck, the weight of legacy passing from one generation to the next. The crowd erupted in applause. But our work, Marcus said, raising a hand for quiet, is not done. Somewhere right now, someone is being stopped for the color of their skin. Somewhere, a Wilson is taking a bribe. Somewhere, injustice is happening. He looked directly into the cameras broadcasting live across the nation. So I'll leave you with this. Film everything. Question authority. Stand witness. Speak truth. He leaned closer to the microphone, his voice lowering but gaining power. The powerful fear nothing more than citizens who refused to look away. The crowd was silent, hanging on every word. Justice isn't a verdict, Marcus said. It's a choice we make every day. Choose justice. Choose courage. Choose to stand up, because the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. He paused, scanning the faces before him. Children, officers, elders, students, and let the silence speak for him. Then he smiled faintly. Your voice matters. Your witness matters. You matter. Never let anyone tell you different. The applause began softly, then grew into thunder. Cameras flashed. The choir began to sing again, the same hymn from years ago, rising above the crowd as Marcus stepped back from the podium. He looked once more at the garden below, the flowers, the plaque, the people standing hand in hand. What began with pain had ended with purpose. What started as humiliation had become history. And as the choir's final note lingered in the golden air, Marcus Thompson knew the truth that would outlast him, the truth he hoped every child in that crowd would one day understand. Justice is not a moment. It's a movement, and it must never stop moving.